Okay, I have gone back to most of the ancient writers, and Ovid, O-V-I-D, wrote Metamorphoses, and this was considered an epic along the lines of the Bible, a masterpiece, a magnus opus. Modern use of creation has been given much critical praise, especially one that is considered the greatest work of a person's career. He went back and took all of the original texts from the first writers, Hesiod and Herodotus, and all of those people, and here's what he came up with. In the first lines of this epic, and I mean epic, it was huge. Look at all these books. The creation, the ages of mankind, flood, Deucalion, who was Noah, Noah's wife, Apollo, Daphne, Phaeton, all the way down the line, all of these crazy things he wrote about, and which had been written about in the Greco-Roman records. And here's what he came out with. The first thing he says, he's talking about metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. It changes. It's a change, a complete change. Here's what he says right here, and they could do this. Metamorphosis is a transformation, unifying theme amongst the episodes of his writing, Metamorphoses. Ovid raises its significance explicitly in the opening lines of what they call the poem. And here's what it is in Latin. In nova fert animus mutatus dicere formas corpora. I intend to speak of forms changed into new entities. So something completely changes. It morphs, it metamorphoses. Accompanying this theme is often violence, which we see nothing but violence in these ancient texts, inflicted upon a victim whose transformation, listen to this carefully, violence inflicted upon a victim whose transformation becomes part of the natural landscape. All right, that's Ovid. That's 8 AD. All right, I'm not going to get too deep into it today, but I'm going to talk to you about the things that were written in the ancient past. This is from the library of Apollodorus. This is 180 BC, somewhere around there, 150 BC. And he was like Ovid. He was a writer, and he wrote about the theology, which was about Zeus and the Titans, the war, the Olympian gods. This is unbelievable. This blew me away like to Never Neverland. War of Hercules, 12 labors of Hercules. And I'm starting to believe this was all real, and I'm pretty damn sure it is now. And all down to the Trojan Wars, the Iliad. And up here it talks about Typhon. Right here. The War of the Giants, Typhon. Then we go to Prometheus, who gave us fire. And Deucalion, which was his son, who was Noah. And all of this is extremely well recorded, and it is just unfreaking believable. And and these are all these mystery religions. All right. Now, remember I showed you that, look at this, Earth grieved at the destruction of her children who had been cast into Tartarus. Watch this. 1.6.3 is the killer. Well, actually 1.6.3 is this will get you going. When the gods had overcome the giants, Earth, still more enraged, Earth itself had intercourse with Tartarus, which is hell, and brought forth Typhon, which is that dragon in the desert. And he was half between man and beast, and he surpassed all the offspring of Earth. His thighs were like humans, and he was so huge that his head often brushed the stars. One of his, and then it goes on with all this stuff. And it's from his thighs downward, he had huge coils of vipers, which when drawn out reached all the way across Africa. And then it goes on and on and on about Typhon was shot and killed by Zeus suddenly from heaven, riding in a chariot of winged horses, pelted Typhon with thunderbolts and pursued him to the mountains. It goes on and on and on. And then you got Prometheus and Noah and Pyra, his wife, and I mean it's just beyond the average person's ability to ever go there. So this is what happened. I found the dragon in the desert, and I found a bunch of things, and I was directed to find these things. I'm going to tell you that right now. I feel 100% certain of it at this point. Things work in a mysterious way, my friends. Okay, my outstanding, wonderful friends. What are you looking at there? Well, it's landscape on planet Earth. And this is something that is extremely green. And this is a river that's coming out. And it is extremely green down in that area. Do you see that? That's not your average green. And it's coming out of here in the middle of the desert, in the greenest green that you will ever see. Do you agree? Now, what do we see after the green? We see a red. Well, what is the red? Is it something we should dread? I can't help myself. Now, what about this black? What information do we lack? I'm rapping to the dragon. So, what are we going to take away from this? What the hell is going on in the middle of the desert with nothing but raw green turning into red, turning into black? Well, this is what's called transition metals. And they are in the blood, which gives you lush growth and deep greening, and I mean deep. And blood is red. And the other part of blood, which is the FeO2 oxygen state instead of 3, turns black. What do we have? Red and black. And what is this creature? Well, let's come back to it in a minute, but that's kind of unusual landscape, wouldn't you say? And this big, what is, I'm going to tell you right now, that's a gash. That is a gash across the throat of a giant dragon in Morocco. And this whole thing was written about in the ancient texts. And this is the runoff of his dead, decaying body, and there is his head. Now, let's talk about transition metals. All right, just so you understand, and I get to brag a little bit, I do understand this chemistry extremely well. This was 1970, right after I got out of the Army. I worked on Nike Hercules missiles in the Army. I came up with it. It's just only two types of interactions. They're dipole-dipoles. And then I went to try to understand polar molecules from nonpolar, but the transfer of energy from light to atomic vapor. Just as I show you, light has a dark and a white side. It's not, and it is atomic vapor. It adds up. The light adds up. All right? Every one of these is exactly what an electron would be. It has a plus and a minus charge. You add two of them together and you have a photon. It comes through the air, spinning through the air. These photons add together, and when they hit a whole batch, they end up being a proton. So there is nothing that exists except dipole to dipoles. And that's exactly what I said way back then. And believe me, I didn't just skim off the surface. I went through everything you can go through. And then I have gone through particle physics at University of Geneva. I went through another course, chemistry, at Rice University. I've been studying everywhere because once I started working with Rod Warren into the light realm, where we could actually see these particles, then everything became quite obvious. And I can obviously understand now why this greening is so extremely green. It's because it has an extra oxygen, that's all. It ends up being very simple once you understand dipole flood theory. Okay, as always, I am able to comment on other people's research using the Fair Use Act, which means I'm not stealing anything, I'm just showing. This is public broadcasting service, and they're talking about the unbelievable story of Earth's most epic flood. Well, his story is unbelievable. Yes, my story is exactly what they wrote. And it was because we were almost impacted by Venus. This is all completely recorded in history, and Velikovsky wrote about it. He was my hero. I wrote a book about him because he was going to be destroyed and forgotten in history. But anyway, I showed you how the blood makes all these things. What's this doing? Why is that green on the side of that cliff? And why is this so green around the water here? I know why, because these were arteries at one time. He's talking about an undeniable flood, and they should go through all kinds of things. And I'll show you. But if you can see these layers are layers of tissue from a creature's body. And these are where the blood flowed through the creature's body. And these were arteries. Wherever you see this heavy-duty green, as I showed you, green comes from blood. Once again, they're showing these. I'm not going to tell you how they're accounting for them, because they're talking about lava flows and this and that. These are tendons or muscle fibers, one or the other. All right, once again, they're showing this. You see this here? You see all these? I think these are the tendon balls that are eroding away, and I believe they're right in this area or right in this area here. But this is an erosion of body tissue and a membrane layer. Okay, the only way we're ever going to get it past all this stuff is to do online Zoom meetings. I signed up for Zoom Pro, so at some point we're going to end up doing that, but I need somebody to moderate it and things, and we have questions and answers. But this is what they're claiming. We were impacted by something. That's what I believe they're talking about, and that's what all of the mainstream say. That's how we got all this disaster on Earth, was pretty much in the Yucatan Peninsula. We had an impact. I disagree with that. That's not an impact. So they always return to this, thinking that the dinosaurs were the big creatures on Earth. Well, these were these were like ticks and mites on the creatures I'm talking about. So I'm going to come back into this, and we're going to get deeper and deeper. But like I say, the only way we're ever going to get this in the open is to have some online discussion, and that's what I want: some online, open Zoom discussions, and then we'll put them. I'll put them on my channel, and you can think about it, and we can discuss it openly. Because this changes literally everything, 100%. What I just showed you, if anybody taught you that before, well, I'd like to know who.